Welcome to Good Goodbyes, the funeral facts podcast. We are really glad you found us. In this podcast, me, Simon, a funeral director,
And me, Tina, I'm an independent celebrant.
are going to discuss all things funeral in an informal space to demystify what happens when we say goodbye.
Based on your questions and queries, Si and myself are two industry professionals that are going to chat through the hows, whats, and wherefores. We actively work in the funeral industry in Devon in the UK. So, we hope you enjoy the episode ahead. Welcome to Good Goodbyes. Hello, welcome to Good Goodbyes. This is Tina.
And this is Si. Welcome to you all. We're going to talk today about a bit of a fun one. It is animals at a service. And this is something that those of you who've been listening since the very beginning or have gone back and listened to the podcast episodes from earlier on will know we've got some good fun conversations for this one.
So, can you bring a dog to a funeral?
Short answer, yes. Long answer, check with the venue. I would say 99% of venues are absolutely understanding and accommodating. We recently looked after a funeral service for a chap who was blind, did a huge amount of work with guide dogs and other charities. So a lot of people attending had guide dogs. And all right, you expect most places to accommodate guide dogs. That's just a given. But when you've got 10 of them in a room, you've still got to be absolutely sure. But yeah, I can't think of any venues I've ever been to that have turned away a dog.
No, I've had when I've inquired on other people's behalf, I've had comments like as long as they are well behaved and on a lead.
Yes.
So I think most people are very sympathetic around animals, especially if the animal was beloved to the deceased. Then yeah, there's a lot of kind of flexibility around it these days. So definitely a yes to dogs. I have had a parrot at a celebration of life event in a cage.
Excellent. Oh, in
And
a
that's
cage, not
probably
just flying around.
been my most unusual animal. And it just basically was, it didn't belong to the person who died, but it belonged to their neighbour, and they used to go in and talk to it regularly.
Okay.
And I was warned it had some choice sayings. So it might or might not kind of head in that direction, but it actually kept quiet right until the end when it just did a bit of whistling.
It was on his best behaviour,
It
as
was
you, as,
actually, it
as you should be
absolutely
at a
was.
funeral.
Yes, it was called Pirate Pete, the
Pirate
pirate.
Pete.
Yes, so
Wow, that's a mouthful.
he was there doing his bit. So that's probably my most unusual guest of the
Yeah.
animal variety. What about you?
I've had a couple of cats on leads, which is always interesting. As an aside, my auntie actually walks a rabbit around central London on a lead, which is always mind blowing to me. But I think the most fun, and we have talked about it in the past, is a llama. And the llama comes up in conversation quite a lot because people would never believe it. But yeah, it was one of the ladies' own llamas, and it was a little surprise for the congregation that we wheeled this llama out middle of the service, walked through the chapel, and in one door out the other.
So funny. And was it well behaved, the llama?
Uh, Very well behaved, didn't leave a mess, and was on a lead. So yeah, much like the dogs, can't do fairer than that, really. But it's certainly, I think it took the edge off. I think it was so relevant to that person, and like you said, Tina, especially if it's the person's own animal, it can be really quite significant to the family
Yeah,
because uh, they're so integral in our lives that we see it all the time that dogs especially have loads more
yeah.
feelings than you'd think. They miss that person. And if you've had a dog 15, 16, 17 years, they're as much a part of your life as anyone else's, really. And
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, I would certainly say that they have a special sense, don't they? I went to a client that you referred to me, actually, Si. And when I went to see this gentleman, it was for him to prepare his own funeral. He didn't have a lot of speech at that point in his illness, but we did communicated an awful lot on his iPad. And beside him the whole time was his dog. And every time he moved his hands to do the iPad, the dog would pop his head under this guy's hand. It just was the most sweetest moment. And you could just feel the love pouring off this animal for this
Yeah.
guy. It was just wonderful. I think, as you say, they're so intuitive, aren't they?
Oh,
So
they definitely know more than we give them credit for.
absolutely, yeah, and talk to us in their own language, really.
Yeah.
I've
And
had,
even
I
we,
have, yeah, I have had an uninvited guest in a
I
church.
was about to say the same.
Have you? Oh, go on, you tell me about yours.
Well, we were out at a natural burial ground out near Comstock in really rural Devon, and we had a deer who was far more inquisitive than you would think and came right up almost to graveside, and it was slightly worrying because I thought, what if the deer falls in?
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
was getting closer and closer and thinking we don't want to scare the deer off, but at the same time, need to be a little bit wary here because that deer won't expect there to be a great big hole in the floor. Um, but luckily, yeah, I think he kind of sniffed around and then gambled away back out into the woodland.
Gosh, that's an amazing moment. I do love deer, actually.
Oh, everyone paused. Everyone was absolutely silent and mesmerized by this deer. But yeah, really beautiful moment.
Oh, well, mine was, it wasn't a service I was conducting, but it was a funeral I went to many years ago, and it was near the Harvest Festival time. So there was lots of produce up on the near where the vicar was talking, like, pumpkins and fruit and veg and things. And as he was as he was talking, this squeaking was going on behind him, and we saw this meese. This meese was hanging out with all the apples and what have you, and but it was really noisy for a little mouse.
Amazing.
I know. So it completely distracted all of us for a little while
Yes, yeah.
until, and I think he kept trying to talk over it. And then I think he just thought, I need to acknowledge the mouse, as people are just going to lose the plot. And that's
Yep.
exactly what he did. He said, and of course, and he did it very, very smoothly. He said something like, of course, Tina loved animals and we are visited here today by a mouse.
Almost like it was planned.
I know. So that was funny. And it was the topic of conversation outside for a little while
Yeah.
about the niece.
But
Yeah.
I think the overriding kind of sense from the conversation is very much yes, you can have animals at the service.
Yeah.
Um, Definitely outside, graveside, whatever it might be. Inside, I've never had any crematoria express any objection. As long as, like Tina says, feet on the floor, lead on, no mess, then absolutely fine. Um, I would say children sometimes are more of a distraction at a service than a dog is.
Yeah. I would completely agree with that sentiment, actually. Absolutely. Yeah. And occasionally, I mean, it's there are modern trends, aren't they? And there was a time when people released helium balloons to memorialize a loved one, and things like that are a bit less popular these days due to the environmental impacts. And so people I haven't encountered this personally, but I know another celebrant where they had a dove release
Yeah,
outside. Uh,
yeah, we've
yeah.
done dove release and we've done racing pigeons as well.
Mm.
So yeah, he was a pigeon fancier, and obviously pigeons go home, so they were released at the crematorium, and they were home before anyone else was.
Yeah. Oh, my granddad used to keep pigeons, actually. That was a nice thing to do.
Yeah, a bit more personal than a dove, specific, I
Yeah.
suppose.
Yeah, to their life. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I've never seen it in a chapel, but when I was at the hospice, there was a lady who used to volunteer a lot for a local donkey sanctuary, which is close to where Si and I live, Sidmouth Donkey Sanctuary, and they bought one of the donkeys.
yeah,
And It wasn't allowed in the building for hygiene purposes because it was a hospice, I suppose, but it was allowed to stick its head through the window. And she really perked up, actually, when the little donkey arrived. So absolutely, animals allowed. And if you want to ask us at the time about it, we will be happily guide you.
From a personal point of view, animals encouraged. I love a dog.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, have you got a dog, Si?
I've got two.
I've got a dog as well.
I've got a Jack Russell Chihuahua cross called Nala, who is a little ankle biter, and then I've got a great big fox red Labrador called Bash.
Great names. I've got a Shih Tzu, a princess, really. She is. She's called Boo.
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 Very nice.
So there you go. So Si and I will want our animals at any event that is our funeral or celebration of life. Si, won't he?
Absolutely. And Bash will outlive us all, so he'll be there.
Oh,
He's just that sort of dog.
Oh, well, we hope you found this episode about can animals come to funerals helpful.
Yeah, and hopefully it's a bit of light listening, because I know we've had a few fairly strong topics recently, so this one's a little bit of light relief and a bit of smile. But yeah, overriding sense, definitely encouraged. Bring your dogs.
Perfect. All right. We'll see you all again soon.
Thank you. Take care.
You've been listening to Good Goodbyes, the Funeral Facts podcast. Please do like, subscribe, comment and share. Drop any questions on our social media, on Instagram, or in the text option in the show notes.
Si and I are qualified professionals, but we always advise our clients to seek any additional support from medical practitioners if they need to. And we hope you enjoyed this episode. Stay well and be kind to one another.